Hi, I'm retired NYPD Detective Vic Ferrari, and welcome to NYPD Through the Looking Glass podcast, where you get unique insight into the New York City Police Department. Before we get started, I encourage you to check out my Amazon author page, where you'll find my series of behind-the-scenes NYPD books. They're $10 paperback or $2.99 ebook download, including my latest NYPD Behind the Blue Wall of Silence. Today's guest is a good friend and former NYPD Lieutenant Lonnie Trotta. Lonnie Trotta, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Vic. Good to see you, bud.
Lonnie, please tell our listeners a little something about yourself.
All right. Well, born and raised in the, I guess, Norwood section of the Bronx. After college, I actually was an accountant for about 5 years and then made the transition to police officer. Started in the 43rd, did patrol, did a number of years of SNU, was in Bronx narcotics. I got promoted, was a sergeant in the 4-8 for a while, about 2 years. And then I went where we worked together in the auto crime division for a number of years. After you retired, I made lieutenant, was down in the 17th precinct, stayed there for the rest of my career, did 20. After 20, I was the head of security for the Montefiore Health System, of which actually, as we were talking last week, you don't realize much, but you actually found the job online for me in something called LinkedIn, or not LinkedIn,
Indeed.
Indeed, years ago. You were already retired. You said, hey, what are you doing, you retired bum? And I said, I'm doing nothing yet. I just, I was still burning my last couple of days off and applied for a position. And next thing I did 12 years there. I retired last year and then moved down to South Carolina, where we're enjoying our retirement.
You know, it's funny. You brought that up when we were talking the other day, and you said, well, you helped me find that job. I go, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I said, I had no connections. You, no. You go, it wasn't a connection. I was looking for a job, and I was on Indeed, and
Right.
something popped up in the Bronx, and I just mentioned it to you. Well, I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah. Actually, your exact words, I believe, was like, didn't you work there as a kid? Which I did. I worked there when I was in high school. So, yeah, kind of went full circle back to the old neighborhood and had a good career there.
You're a Bronx kid like me, and your dad worked in the Hell's Kitchen section of Manhattan. He worked at the Regency Hotel, and your dad
Yep.
was a legit guy. But
Yeah. Oh,
being
totally.
being down there, he rubbed elbows with some of the notorious Irish gang, the Westies. Can you
Yes,
go
he
into that
did.
a little bit?
All right. So my father had a friend named Jack Beller. Jack, I guess, was probably about 20 years older than my father and was sort of like a mentor to him. Got him actually his first job at a hotel when my father got out of the military. Jack, great guy, I have good memories of him, but I would classify Jack as a high level Jewish mobster. Jack, again, ran this bar called Duffy's Tavern, which was located right across from the Port Authority. And that's where they had a lot of card games after hours and on weekends with the Westies crew and some other characters. And my father was a big part of the card games.
You know, down there was a lot of rough bars by the Port Authority, like in the 60s and 70s. I think that West used to hang out in a place called the Sunbright.
Okay.
There's Terminal Bar. I mean, that was a rough area. And I never really realized how rough an area that was until we went down. They sent us down there one year for something. It was right after 9/11 or just before. Yeah, it was after 9/11. They had us down by the Port Authority. And I'm like, this is a rough area. Like, I never really gave Midtown any credit working in the Bronx and Harlem and flying
Right.
out to Brooklyn. I was like, Jesus, it's like the crap from everywhere just kind of seems to like that's like the choke point in New York City.
Yeah. Yeah. And during that time too, you had, 10th Street, 34th Street. They weren't good places to be.
No.
It was the 60s and 70s was, putting it mild, a little seedy.
Seedy.
A
That's something
little
my mother
seedy.
would say, seedy.
Exactly. Exactly.
You at one point, like, I think when you were in your early 20s, you had a guest stay at your
Oh,
house
yeah. So
that you were, like, a little shocked.
I know you kind of like we've talked this story years ago sitting in a patrol car together. So one of the people my father met, and I would probably say it was his best friend, was a guy named Albert Sachs. Again, a wheeler dealer who lived in a hotel, the Holland Hotel, right on, I think between 8th and ninth or ninth and 10th. One funny part of that is at the hotel, you WWF wrestlers when they were in town for shows at the Garden, all stayed there and they trained there. So when I would say anywhere from 9 to about 15, we used to go every month to, or every 2 months, whenever the Garden show was, to wrestling, because we'd get free tickets because they all knew Saki. His name Albert Sachs, but everyone called him Saki. Saki was married a few times, but one of his wives, or ex-wives at this point, was one of the head of the Westies, one of the sisters. If you read the book, and I've read the book numerous times, by T.J. English, and it's a great book. There's a picture of Saki and the wife's, I don't remember the wife's name, the daughter, Alberta Sachs. Alberta Sachs in the book and in real life. One time, I don't know why, she went to the roof. They had a fridge on the roof of the building, and in the fridge was a frozen head, or in the freezer. Her and her boyfriend eventually, I guess, turned state's evidence. And when she was here, I believe she was living in Texas, but again, it's been a long, long time. I don't think I was in my early 20s. I think I was about 18 or 19. She was under witness protection, and they brought her down to New York to testify in one of the trials. I don't know who it was. Might have been Coogan or Featherstone, or one of the big guys of the Westies. And well, lo and behold, they couldn't put her in Manhattan because they would find her pretty quickly. So I don't know. She ended up staying in my house for 2 days. And they had police in my apartment building on my floor and then outside. I have a recollection that after the second day, someone may have been following them back to where we were, where I lived. And then they moved her, and that's literally the last contact we ever had with her. At least
Yeah,
I never did.
I did a little research, and Alberta Sachs would later testify against her uncle Jimmy Coonan, who was the leader of the Westies.
That might have been, you know, what did it say, a year?
I think it said 87.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
And it said that she was testifying that Coonan and Eddie Kaminsky, who was a notorious member of the Hell's Kitchen gang, and he was later killed by Mad Dog Sullivan. She was 15 years old. She was awoken by these two guys, her uncle and Kaminsky, and they says, "We got to borrow a couple of knives." And and then they came back later with a plastic bag, and they told her Patty Duggan's head is in the bag. So, and later on, she would go on to testify that in trial, and it put Coonan away for life.
Right. Yeah, that might have been the trial. Again, I was a little on the younger side,
Well, yeah, and you didn't know it was coming.
and I was just getting out of college. So yeah. But that was the last I saw of her or heard, again, until the book came out. I do remember her face. I do remember her. I know she had a young daughter at some point. But yeah, they were using my
Your house
apartment.
is a staging area.
There was the stash house for a couple nights.
So what made you become I know you were in accounting, and you were telling me that time, you said, I go, "Where did you go in accounting?" And you said, "Tyler, Texas." And I go, "The Tyler Rose, that's where Earl Campbell lived."
Yeah,
Or came
yeah.
from. What made you become a member of the New York City Police Department?
So it was funny. The accounting was going good. My next door neighbor, who was sort of like a second father to me, was a FDNY firefighter. And he kept saying, "You're doing too much travel." And he would say, "Are you home next weekend?" "Yeah, I'm home." "Oh, I signed you up for the police test." "Oh, I signed you up for the fire test." I'm like, "Come on." He's like, "Oh, just go. It'll be 2 hours of your time. Take the test." So honestly, to appease him, I started taking the tests, did really well in all of them. And at one point, my company says, "We're moving to Colorado. Do you want to go?" At that point, I was like, I really don't know anybody in Colorado. I don't want to go to Colorado. All my friends here. My mother was deceased already, so my father was here. So I said, all right. And literally, probably about a week later, I got called by the fire department, and fire wasn't for me. And then I got called by the police department. They said, "We have a class going in like 3 weeks or a month from now. If you want to go, you're in." And I said, "You know what? I'll give it a try. If I don't like it, I can always go back to accounting." And obviously, which
Right.
I never did. Never went back.
So after you get out of the academy, you go to the 4-3. Did you want to go there?
So I had a good friend who's still one of my best friends who I guess had a little juice. And as his words were, "You got to go somewhere where there's clean bathrooms and clean places to eat, but you want action."
4-3.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, 5'2" was out obviously because I grew up in the 5'2".
Right.
It was another choice, and so he said, "I got the perfect place for you, the 4-3." So that's where I went, and loved it. Loved the 4-3. Great people. Yeah, have nothing but good things to say.
Can you describe like the neighborhood, what it was like? What year did you get to the 4-3?
92.
So describe like what the 4-3 was like.
So 4-3 actually had like I think it was called Sector Mike, which was the area in and around Westchester Square. Still a good area, good Italian. There was one or two good Italian delis over there still. You had the Soundview section at the end, was still pretty good, not too bad. But then you had in and around Hugh Grant Circle and Parkchester, which was really starting to turn. And then you had, of course, you had Watson Avenue, on the lower end, which was, probably one of the big drug supermarkets in the Bronx. So, there were always good places to eat. And like you said, there was always clean bathrooms.
The 4-3 was one of those places where there was spots you could hide. And if you wanted action, like you said, you go down to Watson Avenue or for
Oh, yeah.
Westchester Avenue. And then, like you said, Watson was 24/7 with the drugs. It was like an open air drug bazaar.
Totally open area. I remember after patrol, I had done warrants for a little while, precinct level warrants. Then it was so busy. They had two full-time SNU teams. A lot of precincts had one. We had two. So the one of the SNU sergeants said, "Hey, you're wasting your time in the warrants. Come on to the SNU team." And I did that, loved it, had a great team. And, I was there a couple of years, and then eventually they expanded what they called SBI, South Bronx Initiative for narcotics. And a whole bunch of us from our SNU team, including our supervisor, went over to Bronx Narcotics.
I was in the 4-3 a lot because I worked in a couple of units that like auto crime and then auto loss. And you're in every precinct in the NYPD, in the Bronx. So each precinct's got its own vibe. To me, when I would go into the 4-3, and I liked the 4-3, the 4-3 had a cast of characters that either worked there or were kind of like EDPs that kind of hung around. And I remember, you're going to remember the guy's name. There was a bald old timer that he always had the TS, or he was the assistant desk officer.
Richie Turtley.
Yes.
Richie Turtley.
And
Yes.
he would speak in non sequiturs, and I didn't know him from a hole in the head, but since I was in there all the time, I guess he thought he knew me. And you'd be standing there processing a collar, and he would come up to you and go, "My wife made me chicken salad today. I friggin' hate chicken salad." And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. And I liked him because he was very helpful. If you asked him for
Oh.
something, he would, could you get me this? Could you ask the desk? He was great, but
Yes, he was.
he would just come up to you and just start talking to you like he knew you for decades. I liked him.
Yeah, he was an old, I think it was part of, and again, I'll just kind of did this off memory. There was a part of Bronx Task Force, I guess, that was a little on the heavy-handed side years and years before. And I know
Oh, when it
Richie,
was TPF.
yeah, TPF, yeah, and Richie was part of that. Yeah, he was quite a character, great for any,
Yeah.
especially young guys, like helping him with the collar. But the joke was he would sweat to death. He'd stand
That's
behind
right.
the gas, sweating to death, and the poor guy could have gotten out, stayed on. Obviously wasn't in the best of health, and I
No.
think he had a heart attack and passed away while doing a barrier detail.
Yes, I did hear that.
Yeah.
I heard two wild stories about him. One I know I heard from the guy that did it to him, played a practical joke on him. You remember in the precincts, they used to have the old toilet seats. They were black.
Mhm.
Guy that I know from the 4-3 said he put the fingerprint ink around the black toilet seat, and this guy sat on it, and he
Yeah.
was screaming because he had the black horseshoe on his ass, and he was screaming at the guy that his wife had to scrub his ass when he got home because he had the imprint of the fingerprint ink on the toilet
Right.
seat.
I actually don't think he was married.
Oh, it wasn't?
I don't think so. Again, this is a long time ago.
Yeah.
I actually think he lived with his mom, if I remember correctly.
Maybe his mom made him the chicken
I don't
salad
know.
sandwich.
Somebody.
Then I heard another story. You'd know if this was true, that his cousin owned Jack's restaurant at the square,
Yes,
and he got busted for working in there on duty.
I did. I do recall that. Yeah, I think he was making hamburgers or something. He was quite a
love to know.
character, but let me tell you, when you're a new officer,
Yeah, he's
and
gold.
you're either get a collar, you're assigned a collar, and you're standing at the desk and you have no idea what to do. Richie was the man who would come on, guy, let's go. Let me show you what to do. You're going to do this. Here's the paperwork. Get everything. Yeah, he was, a little rough on the edges,
Yeah.
but a really great guy. He really was. He was good.
Now, another character who didn't work in the precinct but thought he worked in the precinct was this young Spanish guy. And I don't know if he had a speech impediment, but he was
Yes,
definitely
he
deaf.
does.
And he
Well,
had these hearing aids that looked like caterpillars or big shrimp
yep,
that
yep,
hung on his ears. And he would dress like an NYPD detective. He would carry folders like an NYPD detective. His home base was the 4-3, but he would pop up
yes.
in other places like Bronx Court. And you would
All the
have
time.
all the time, like 20. He put in a 40-hour work week, this guy. And
I
he
mean,
would walk up to you. You'd be in court. And he
yeah.
would, and as a young cop, I didn't know who he was.
I'll-
And he comes up to me and he goes, God help me for making fun of this guy, but this is exactly how he sounded.
Yeah.
He would go, "What you got?" And you go, "What? What you
Oh,
got?
no, what you got, Rook?
What you got,
included
Rook?" Right?
Rook.
And I say, GLA, Grand Larceny Auto. You
Yep.
go like this. You'd hand him your phone and go, "This is bullshit," and throw it on the floor. And you're like, I'm going to kick this guy's ass. And then you find out, like, no, he's kind of like the 4-3 precinct mascot.
You're gonna laugh. I'm gonna try to find a picture from a number of years ago when I was back at Montefiore, and we saw him outside the
He's
hospital.
everywhere.
So he passed on actually at Montefiore.
He died?
He died a number of years ago. So let me back up and go to a funny story with him. I had a partner, Louis Rivera, big Spanish guy, one of the best people I ever worked with. And me and Louis get a call, and I believe it was on Ward Avenue, which is
Okay.
right off Ward and Watson. Suspicious odor. Okay. Now, remember back in the day when someone said suspicious odor, you knew pretty much it was a dead body. Well, we get to this location, and so I was fairly new. I maybe had like 6 or 8 months. I'm sorry, I'm looking down because I'm looking for that picture because you're gonna like crack up. And Louis in front of me, and he's like, all right, Now when we got upstairs, the door was kicked open. The door was open. So Louis like, make sure you can get your gun out. I stay behind me. Let's go. We go one room. There was a kitchen. We go to the next room. And then literally coming out of a back room is him with a folder. He goes, and the dead body's in the back. And like he's like, yeah, everything's good, natural causes. And like, okay. So now, we call the sergeant, we look around, make sure everything was good. The sergeant comes, like the sergeant like played along, and they're like, yeah, well, the sergeant, I kind of remember who it is, but I'm not sure. And he's like, listen, Lonnie, go talk to the detective, which was him. He goes, and vouch what you have to and just follow his lead. I'm like, okay. And they're all kind of like looking at me. And I'm like, all right, maybe just because I'm the new guy, but I thought he was a detective.
So did I.
I totally thought, and I got to find this picture because you'll appreciate it.
All right, well, you're looking for the photo. Good friend of
Yeah.
mine,
Mhm.
cab
Yep.
arrives.
Yeah. Bobby
Three
Rivera.
junkies. He's got no gun. He's just a kook. And they were laughing. And then later on, one of the drug addicts made a CCRB against him, but they didn't know his name. He had no police shield. And my friend was reading me the CCRB because it was going around the 4-3. They photocopied it, and it said, I got stopped by this detective. He threw me up against the wall. I couldn't understand a word he was saying, and I think
Yep.
he's retarded.
Yeah.
And it went down to CCRB, and then CCRB started an investigation. But he would pop up everywhere. I'm gonna if I could I had a photo of him. If I can find it, I'll post it up. But
Yeah.
I didn't realize that he passed.
Yeah, he did. Funny story as I'm still looking. A number of years ago, when someone would, who was like either a risk or like a side patient or something like that, would elope from the hospital, I would get a call.
Right.
We called it a code brown. So I remember my guys one evening called me, hey, boss, we got a code brown, blah, blah. I said, okay, blah, blah, blah. They said, yeah, Bobby Rivera. I said, wait a second. I go, did he, like, I got the nurse on the phone. I go, put the nurse on the phone. I go, did he talk with us? Yeah, you know him? I go, listen, call it off. Call it off. He's got mental capacity. Call it off. And then I remember one of the president's hospital called me, why'd you call it off? I said, listen, I know the guy. He's not a mental case. He's not suicidal. I said, he's wacky. I said, put
He's
this one on
harmless.
me. I know who he is.
He was harmless. It's like he was a pain
Harmless.
in the ass, but he was harmless. And then as you get older, you take a step back. You feel bad for the guy because the guy wanted to be a cop so bad.
God.
He put in a 40-hour week at least, and like you said, I've seen him in multiple NYPD station houses, but the 4-3 was his home base. He was always at Bronx Central booking.
Yeah,
I think they kicked him out of the courthouse after a while because he was being so much of a pain in the ass.
I would say I would comfortable saying 50 to 100 cops got scammed or more who
Oh,
believed that he was
wait,
really a cop. Again, he always had the folder,
suit.
the suit, always just showed up out of nowhere.
Someone gave him, he had a detective pin for a while. I
Yeah,
remember that. Like, was somebody breaking balls gave him like an NYP, like a union pin,
right.
going around with that. That was like his prized possession. So when you were in the 4-3, you worked in SNU, which is Street Narcotics Enforcement Unit.
Yep.
Then you go to Bronx. You went to Bronx Narcotics, right?
Then I went to Bronx Narcotics. I'll find the picture
Yeah, yeah.
eventually, but I
So
have a picture of him.
for you? What was the biggest difference between SNU precinct level doing narcotics work to going to Bronx Narcotics?
It was a little bit more of on a higher level. SNU, you're looking for the street dealers, the buyers. You try to get a couple of the buyers and then go for the person who was, dealing. Here, in Bronx Narcotics, you're looking a little bit of a higher level. You're looking mostly for the dealers and then try to really tap
Go
into
up.
the suppliers, go up the chain, go up the chain.
So what module were you in? What
I,
precinct?
I was in a 4-3 module.
All
Yep, this
right.
is a
So you
4-3
knew
module.
that's actually helpful that they would put you in there.
Yes. Yeah, most of the guys from my SNU team went to some part of 4-3 module, and a bunch of us went together.
So when you were in Bronx Narcotics, did you do any controlled deliveries or rips?
Yeah, we did a plenty. We did plenty of them.
Do any stand out?
There was actually a really big one, and I'm trying to remember. It was in the 4-1. Actually, we were located out of the old 4-1 on Simpson Street, and we had a great like CI. I had a really good CI who gave us probably, I don't know, a little over 2 keys of heroin.
That's a lot.
Yep, yep. He was a good CI. He was a good CI. But yeah, I mean, it was a lot. Again, and once you're in narcotics, for the 4-3 then had they had SNU, but then they started that tracer, which was doing a little bit of narcotic kind of stuff,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we would do the entries for them. You know, we would do the once the search warrant is got, we then go do the entries for those guys.
Two
So
keys
it,
of
it was
heroin.
always something else, always something going on.
That's a lot of 2 keys of heroin is like $360,000
Yeah,
at least.
yeah. And then there was the one big one. Actually, that might have been auto crime later on, where we had one with trucks down in the 4-1. That
I
was
was
all.
with you. I was
Yeah,
with you on that. You and I were doing a 4-12.
yep,
And our lieutenant actually was there too. And let's see if you remember this. We were doing a 4-12, which was unusual for us,
right.
with nothing going on. There wasn't a case going on or anything. And our lieutenant called us down to this warehouse on Southern Boulevard.
Right.
No, Bruckner
Bruckner
Boulevard,
Boulevard. Yeah,
just before you got to Longwood. And what it
yeah.
was is Bronx Narcotics had a CI, and it was an 18-wheeler from Texas.
Texas. Yeah,
And it pulled in. It pulled into this garage, and they waited about 15 minutes, and then narcotics went in, and I think it was 450 keys.
yeah. It was a lot. It was crazy, and cash.
And if you remember, in the truck, it was in
Right.
the refrigeration unit.
Yep.
It was all the way in the truck. It was a false wall.
Yep.
And by the time we got there, they were divvying it up. Like the bricks were marked, like one would say NYPD, a bunch of bricks, and they were going in different duffel bags. Remember, they're like different colored duffel bags, and like
Yeah.
each one had like a different shipment name on it. So
Was there stolen cars in that warehouse? Because is that why we got called?
no. But all
No?
right. So somehow our lieutenant found. Oh, I know what it was. One of the subjects
Right.
that went there to pick up the car, one of the subjects that was there, like supervising this
Right.
transfer of narcotics, Bronx Narcotics wanted us to look at his car to make sure it didn't have a trap. Because they figured with that much drugs, there was money. So they thought like there'd be $1 million or $2 million in this car. So they called our office. And of course, our lieutenant was a bull in a china shop. He had to show up. So you and I are looking at the car.
Yeah.
The car is clean, no traps. So he turns to me and he says, I want you to run now it was an indoor parking garage. There's
Yes.
probably 80 cars in there. He goes, I want you to run every plate and VIN number in this place. I said, all right. Wasn't happy about it, but okay. He
Right.
had the mobile digital terminal in the car.
Yeah.
I started banging out plates, right? there was a dirt bike. I don't know if you remember this. There was a dirt bike
Okay.
that was it was purged. So that means the alarm on the bike was more than 4.5 years old, but it was a dirt bike stolen from like the Poconos 5 years earlier, right?
Uh,
So I go, listen, I go, everything's good. You got this stolen dirt bike. He goes, oh, good. He goes, go to the 4-1, get a printout, and give it to the narcotics lieutenant. And I go, Lou,
he's
I
not gonna.
said, this guy is dealing with 450 kilos worth of drugs. The
Right.
fact that there's a stolen dirt bike in the back, when this all blows over, I'll go and talk to the garage owner. I don't want to bother the lieutenant with this, but
Yeah.
our lieutenant always wanted to be recognized. He was always that guy looking at the glass trying to get in.
Yes.
And like he thought like he would curry favor with this lieutenant by me telling him that we had a stolen dirt bike. And there, you know how it is when you anything
Yeah.
we'll get into money and drugs. It's a big you don't want nothing to go missing and everything's got
No.
to be accounted for. And he forced me to go to this lieutenant who's looking at me like I'm an asshole. Like, hey boss, here's this printout of this, and the guy was looking at me like, yeah, okay, thanks, kid, get out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. And you talk about, doing a lot of money. I mean, that's, me and you had that.
Yeah, I'll get to that. I'll
Yeah.
get to that. So after narcotics, what made you take the sergeant's exam?
Just because I already had the college,
That's true.
kind of wanted to be a boss, the old saying, oh, it's a boss's job. And I was like, you know what? Let me take the test. And I kind of knew, I think kind of my goal was, stop, get to lieutenant and then obviously stop at that point. I didn't want to go any further. Smart move. But yeah. Yeah. So, and again, I'm sorry, I keep looking for this photo because you're going to love it. But yeah, I just wanted to be, just get in the game, as a boss.
In that,
Well, and again, it wasn't really juice. I mean, it wasn't juice, is not, get you to the 4.8. I mean, for the 4.3. Then like the juice got me to the 5.0.
I know.
So yeah, no, it was actually, I think if I remember, I was supposed to go to the 5.2.
Good
And
house.
then, I found the picture. Hopefully you could see it.
That's him in the center.
That's him in the center.
He doesn't have his hearing aids on.
No. Yeah, so I think I was supposed to go to the 5.2 and then I got nudged out. And then they're like, okay, you got the 4.0 or the 4.8. And I'm like, I'll try the
No.
4.8.
Or a
I got to go to Arthur Avenue.
Can you explain, like, so a lot of our listeners aren't NYPD, former NYPD
Mhm.
members. In my opinion, one of the most chaotic things you can do in the NYPD is be a desk officer at a busy precinct.
Yes.
And when you take that desk, so say you're coming, you're the 4 to 12 boss, and you're coming in and you're going to relieve the day tour boss. I always call the desk the electric chair because you're responsible for everything.
Everything.
Things are out of your control. You're the fall guy. Whatever happens in that station house it's going to fall on you. Can you explain just the responsibilities or what it's like in a busy precinct? You're coming on the 4 to 12 shift. You're relieving the day tour sergeant.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's everything. First you're accounting for all the people, all the officers coming and going. You're making sure the new ones are there. The old ones are signing out. They're signed out. You're checking the roll call. Then you've got to, start. I mean, the litany of the amount of entries you would make in the large blotter from property. And again, that could take you 45 minutes, all the property that's, in the temporary storage, which could be, arrest property, it could be found property, it could be anything. It could be, guns, drugs, this, that. You're accounting for everything. You're accounting for all, the vouchers, what you're up to. You're accounting for summonses,
Radios.
radios.
The cells. If there's prisoners in the cells.
If you have prisoners, you got to account for them. You got to go physically look at the prisoners. Are you okay? Make sure they're okay. Talk to the officers. Find out all the, like, if there's a, especially a busy precinct, you may have 3 or 4, or 5 different arrest officers, with their prisoners. You got to make sure their prisoners, a certain time limit. You got to get them in and you got to get them out. Make sure the officers are going. So yeah, your first 2.5 hours at the desk until you could literally take time to breathe is just one thing after another.
I equate it, you're busier than an air traffic controller.
Yeah, you're probably on the same level. Eventually it'll, once you get all your requirements done, usually pretty good. But yeah, it was hectic. But I was always, I didn't mind paperwork. I guess that kind of comes back to my accounting stuff. And, once you kind of figure out after a while a plan on how to attack it, then you roll right through.
Yeah, but But what's I always found, like, as a rookie cop and a young cop, I didn't realize it. Then you start getting older and you're looking at things different. You're watching that desk officer do all this stuff, and then here comes Bronx Narcotics with 15 prisoners on a daisy chain. Now, normally their supervisor will jump behind the desk and start making the entries and stuff, right? But
Yep.
then you got two guys from street crime with a gun collar, and then here comes two guys from you, and it's just the desk. It never stops.
Never.
It just keeps coming in.
Yep. Yeah. Especially if narcotics comes in with 10 or 15 bodies, yeah, their supervisor, you would say, okay, all yours,
Have at it.
handle it. But still, like you said, if anything happens, the bottom line is not their supervisor's responsible. The precinct desk officer is the one who is, responsible for everything. Even like if something happened up in the detective squad, even if they have a boss, even if they have a lieutenant and you're the sergeant on the desk, you're responsible for everything that functions during that, kind of the operations during that time period.
I did my NSU, my field training in the 4.8, and then I always liked the 4.8. I always liked the cops in the 4.8. I always thought they were great guys, great
Yeah.
girls. The weird thing about the 4.8 is it's the borough. So that means on the second or third floor, you
Right.
have chief of the Bronx, all
Yep.
these captains that work for the chief, and there's a ton of supervision in the borough. So it's not like you always had to be on your toes
Hmm.
in the 4.8 because you never knew who was showing up to visit the chief, or the police commissioner could come in to
Yep.
visit the chief. Like it'd be rare if it could happen. The police commissioner could come into the 4.1 one day because he wanted to, but
Right.
more than likely he's going to the borough.
Yep.
So you couldn't be screwing around, or it always had a different vibe to it. What did you think of the 4.8 when you got there?
I liked it. I got to tell you, it was again a place that had a good mix. You had the Arthur Avenue section, though it was changed a lot. Again, the cops were excellent.
Yeah.
It was a lot like listen, and I've never been in a place, knock on wood, but you hear places that are pretty divided.
Mhm.
The cops are do nothings. They wouldn't back each other up. But I can tell you, everywhere I worked, from
Yeah.
the 4.3 to 4.8, and then as a lieutenant in the 17, you called for help. You had everybody there. Yeah, 4.8 was another really good place to work. You know what? The chief walked in most of the time. We had a pretty good all the time I was there. We had a good chief. Again, someone would call attention and they would just wave and walk right
Yeah.
in the door and right out. They never, I don't think once ever came up to the desk. You'd get a call once in a while. Hey, the chief needs something, can you, send somebody. I never had an issue working in the borough. Good resources too. You get to know some of the people upstairs, and then they kind of recognize you for the work. So yeah, so I was there, did patrol, and then because of the experience with narcotics and SNU, I was a tracer sergeant. So that was kind of like the follow up to almost like a conditions team slash help with narcotics with a lot of not a lot of new officers. And I had a great little team. We did some SNU sets. We got everybody SNU trained. We did a lot of vehicle checkpoints, and then if there were things happening, we'd address them, precinct level. So yeah, I liked it. I liked it a lot. It was actually a good place to work.
So you had OCCB experience working in Bronx Narcotics. You want to go back as a supervisor. You put in your time in the 4.8. You wind up getting drafted into IEB.
Yes. Yeah.
Can you explain to our listeners how you get drafted into IEB?
So when you go before the board, you have to go before a board when you're looking to go to a specialty unit. I was actually ticketed by the chief of Bronx Narcotics to go back to Bronx Narcotics as a supervisor. But you got to go to a meeting in front of what they call the board, and there's captains and above from the Detective Bureau, from narcotics, and unfortunately internal affairs, and then one or two others. So there was like 5 people in the room. And
Yeah.
I remember the day that I went, and I went with 5. There was 5 of us who, were putting in for different things. And this was all around the city, And, I was last to go, and everyone's coming out, and they're like, oh, man, the IEB guy is asking me these questions, all these kind of like integrity questions. And so now it's, I'm last, going in alphabetical order. And a captain comes out and he says, hey, I'm from narcotics. He goes, chief, and I don't want to say the chief's name. He goes, listen, he goes, listen, this is just a mere formality. He goes,
Hey, you're in.
he goes, the IEB guys, blah, blah, blah. He says, I'm going to hit you with some hard questions because I got to get these guys off, because they may want you. He said, just, answer them. Okay. So I go in there. He's asking me some stuff, the IB guy who literally, I think everyone else got like two or three integrity questions, asked me one like obscure question, like about a search warrant that we did. And actually, we did it when I was in narcotics for a 4-3 SNOO team. Hey, did you see, drugs, blah, blah, blah. Did you know if anybody took drugs? I said, do you know the people who were arrested? I said, yeah. I said, I go, the brothers, I said, who are, probably have a combined like, 100 arrests between them for narcotics. And then that was it. Then then the narcotics guy was next. And he's asking me, about motivating my troops and this and that. And, 2 weeks later, I get the word everyone else went to where they wanted. I got picked up by AB. Um, Try to argue it at first. I said, listen, I'll just stay in the 4-8. And the second in command of IAB calls me up. He says, if you ever want to go anywhere in your career, he goes, you better take this. I was like, oh, great. Yay.
What team were you in?
I was in, it was a group. I don't know. We covered the Bronx. That's all I remember. I think we covered the even precincts in the Bronx. Group 21, maybe? Might have been 21.
Can you explain how it works in IEB, like how the cases come in and like the types of cases you worked on?
So, thank God, knock on wood, I never had a case, that involved anything crooked with police. A lot of it was complaints. Yeah, they would come in, and again, the procedure then was, and we didn't deal with it on our level. It went to downtown. There was like a call center, and then they would, send either dispatch you right away if there was a case, or you'd get a case forward to you. A lot of it was mostly property cases. Some, I would say, a good majority of the cases, well, whether fortunate or unfortunate, were called in by other cops, or this one likes only Spanish guys and the white guys on his team. I mean, you used to get that, like this like craziness, And it's funny. I remember we had one caller who used to call, and he would call the call center downtown, and then he would call, somehow got our numbers. Oh my
Great.
God. He was a professor in Bronx Community College, an Indian gentleman who was a raging alcoholic who would call us 24/7 with every name of every police officer he's ever seen. And I know they're dirty and you got to find them. And you could just hear him, like his voice was slurred. And I think finally they stopped, like, at first they're like, oh, he's serious. And then you look into it, you're like, oh my God, no, no. So luckily, I didn't have anything, of substance,
Right. Where you didn't get something where somebody was dirty and
No,
it would.
no, oh, thank God. Thank God, and then when I was probably about, because you got to give them 2 years.
Yeah.
So when I was probably at about a year and a half, I ran into my old captain, one of my old captains from narcotics, who was now the head of autocrime. And he said, oh, when are you getting out? Blah, blah, blah. He's like, I got a spot for you. And yep, he was true to his word. And he put in, and eventually I got released. I had to do a little, they say 2 years, but by the time they let you go, I think it was
Yeah,
not
it's
told
more.
me exactly 2 years, 6 months, and 14 days. And that number probably will never leave me. But, listen, I think too, for supervisors, it's not the worst thing because you learn how to make sure you protect yourself and your officers. I remember one time, one of the precincts, the desk sergeant called, put the officer on the phone, and the officers made a great trespass thing, and trespassing, affidavit were asked with a guy who claimed that they took drugs off him, and they did. They locked him up with drugs. He said he had whatever 7, they had 5, and the officers insisted on the supervisor calling, and we went down there, and eventually I got the guy to say, listen, how many did you have? I had 5. So why'd you tell everybody 7? Oh, because the officers arrested me, and I was pissed off at them. So again, you kind of learn. I worked with a lot of good supervisors, sergeants and lieutenants. Pretty much everyone I worked with had experience in either narcotics or the detective bureau. So they were good street cops and kind of understood a little bit more than someone who was not a street cop and then thinks everyone is dirty, which of course you have those in internal affairs. We had one in like our whole module. But
What was your first? So you get to auto crime. What was your first impression when you got to our office?
well, again, it's funny. I was not a car guy. I didn't know a lot, and which I even told the captain, who was now an inspector. He's like, "Listen, you'll learn. You know how to do cases. You know how to do casework. You know how to review casework." He says, "You'll learn." It was eye opening. I mean, it was great. All the guys were really pretty helpful. I think me and you kind of hit it off right
We hit it off.
away,
Yeah.
long before you were on my team. And it's a learning experience. Again, I knew how to do cases, but I didn't know, about, hidden VINs and NISTA stickers and the difference between minivans and the short window, long window,
Okay.
all stuff, and Jeeps. Yeah, it was really good. Like you said, the lieutenant wanted to be involved in everything. I had a big run-in once during the blackout. But to me, he was more bark than bite, and you
Yeah.
let him bark
Right.
and you go on. That's it. He didn't put you on paper. He never
No.
put I mean, maybe one person I know he put on paper, but he never put you on paper.
Yeah.
So he wants to, he was an old timer who wanted to, maybe be a little more important than he was.
Yeah.
In the end, we've all worked for worse people. I don't include him in my worst people. I mean, he was not overall a bad guy. I know some
No.
people had issues with him.
Y-
You
You know,
worked and he liked you. And that's it. And he left you alone.
I mean, he would get involved in my stuff and try to steer me in directions I didn't want to be steered. But again, I've worked. He wasn't. I'd take him again if I had to. I mean, he wasn't that bad.
No.
And I worked in auto crime for 10 years. I had 6 sergeants.
Right.
And for whatever reason, you and I worked together during some of the craziest shit. Like I was there 10 years, but it always seemed, and I worked in your team 2 different occasions.
Oh.
I'm just going to throw a couple of things at it. See if you remember these things. The time I stopped the cop driving a stolen car, Frank and I got a tip. I got a tip from DMV, and they said they got
Was
this
that in the
Toyota
4.3?
49.
Was in the 4.9? Oh, yes.
49.
Yes, you're
And I
right.
said, so, DMV tells me there's this car that came into New York on a phony Pennsylvania title. Would you mind
Yep.
taking a look at it? I see the car double parked, go
Yes.
up to the car. Guy shows me his police ID. I'm on the job and I'm looking at it and I'm like, this car is stolen. I go, you got to come with me to the precinct. He goes, all right.
You bought it off somebody on Jerome Avenue, if I
Yeah,
remember correctly.
well, that was the story. And I remember calling you up and I says, I got good news and I got bad news. You go, what's wrong? And I says, I got a guy with a tagged car. I go, the bad news is he's an MOS, which means member of the service. And you go, and you were great with that. You're like, okay, I'm going to tell the lieutenant. I'm going to start making the notifications. You go, just, don't really interview him. Whatever he says, check out the car. I
Yep.
says, you got it. And Frank stayed with him in the station house. I went out and checked out the car, got the hit on the car. I think it was stolen from Orlando, Florida off a car lot like a month or 2 earlier.
Yep.
You came in, you started the preliminary investigation. Of course, our lieutenant was there. He showed up. And that turned into a thing because I don't know if you remember this, duty captain shows up, great guy, places the cop on modified assignment pending an investigation. The cop's story did not make sense. He said
Nope.
he paid $35,000 for it from a guy on Jerome Avenue, and the car is brand new with no warranty. Can you show us where you got the money from? Well, I saved it. So you didn't make a withdrawal. You didn't pay him. You paid him with cash. So the whole story didn't make sense. There was a sergeant or lieutenant from IAB showed up, and I had a problem with him. A year earlier, I was in Manhattan court. This is a funny story. I don't know if you know this. I was in Manhattan court, and they had just changed it where they didn't want us going down to court to write up an arrest. They wanted us to do it on the phone. And it was a complicated arrest. And I had to be in front of the DA to spell it out and show up. I said, I don't care if I get a rip. I'm going down there to make this case stick.
Right. Those things.
I know what it was. The victim had to come in I had to pick the victim up and take her down there because she was leaving the country. It's the whole thing. I go down to court. I'm writing up the arrest. I go to the vending machines. There's a court officer with his jacket zipped up. I see the white shirt, blue pants. I'm getting soda, and he's just standing there glaring at me. I go, well, go ahead. And he goes, you're not supposed to be down here. And I go, do me a favor. And he started asking me questions. I thought he was a court officer. So I go, just man the magnetometers. We got a good working relationship with the court officers. But I kind of abused him. I was like, if you want a soda, stop breaking my balls. He unzips it. And I think he was a sergeant. And he goes, come with me. And he drags me into the little office they had. 4-3 alumni. You remember John Kurlander?
No.
He was a sergeant or lieutenant there. I used to deliver pizza with him in Throgs Neck as kids.
Oh my
He
God.
turns to the guy and he goes, what's wrong, Vic? And I go, this guy's breaking my balls. So it was like checkmate. He couldn't give me a rip, but he hated me. Now he's in IEB. He wants me to investigate this case. I said,
Hey,
no,
yes.
you remember that? I went,
Yeah.
no. I says, I found police corruption. I called it in. I go, where does it say on that sign over there that you must investigate police corruption? I go, I found it. I'm handing it off to you.
Actually, one thing on that case that I'm remembering, it wasn't the old lieutenant. It was our new lieutenant, Rob.
Well, yeah, you're
And
right.
Rob's like, he looked at me. He's like, "What?" I go, "No, we're not touching this." And he went in and told the IB lieutenant, he goes, "We're not investigating it." He goes, "You could do whatever you want. You could ask us a question, but we're
Yeah,
not.
we'll answer
Our
it.
guys are not investigating it." And we got them to back off.
Okay, see, I thought it was our first, so you're right.
No. He was already retired and replaced by,
Yeah, right. Another case,
one of the best guys ever.
yeah, you weren't my sergeant at the time, but you
Right.
were working because the other guy was mowing someone's lawn.
Yes.
And I had a case. I locked up this kid on the Lower East Side with a tag stolen BMW. I saw that he had another car. It was a Honda that was since sold. It had a salvage history. The car was burned. It's in Brooklyn. I get a search warrant for this car. Me and another detective, we get up first thing in the morning. It's registered to a fictitious person. So whoever I stop is going to say I borrowed the car.
Right.
So the plan was to snatch the car off the street. Someone's going to go to an NYPD precinct and report it stolen, and then get them to come into the precinct to claim their vehicle, answer that, yes, this is my car, and now we can nail them. So me and another detective go up there, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. We hook this thing with a tow truck. We yank it off the street. It was up in the 8-3. Bring it up to the Bronx. I'm looking. I get the hit under I think the firewall was welded in or whatever. Anyway, I'm tossing the car now, and I find a Gap bag. And I squeeze it, and I look at the other detective. I go, there's money in here. And he goes, your ass. I open it up, and remember that the money was in rolls with rubber bands?
Yeah.
So I bring it upstairs. I says, come on. And you go, what? I go, come on. And we go up to Rob's office, and I threw the money on the desk. Thank God. It was $38,000 and change. Thank God for your accounting skills, because I would still be there counting that friggin' money. Remember we had like a leaf table set up?
Yeah. Oh, we had like probably 2 like 6-foot tables set up, and then and they were all denominations.
Yes.
Old
Small
bills, and
bills.
most of them were not new bills that were crisp. So we had to unfold them, put them. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, that was probably a good 8-10 hours of overtime, because then we had to bring it to
Forfeiture unit in 1PP.
yes.
That's where they vacuumed the money. I thought they were playing a joke.
Yeah.
Guys vacuuming. He goes, just wave this. I go, what?
Yeah.
And they were vacuuming the money with a shop vac, and then they pulled that chip out and they plugged it into a computer, and it goes, oh, this spiked for ecstasy and hashish.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? Yeah, okay.
I know.
Then we had to take that money back to the Bronx, and we started getting hungry. And you loved that Chinese takeout place, 69 Bayard.
69 Bay. Me and you found that.
That was your spot. You liked that.
No, well, actually, I think I thought I was with you. We were down in Chinatown.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. Yeah, with DMV.
And we were there, and then we asked a couple. We were processing an arrest or something, and we asked the cop, like, where do you guys eat? I go, 69 Bayard. I mean, listen, I remember that place fondly. You walk in, there was nothing but dollar bills on the wall.
Filthy dollar bills, like wallpaper.
Oh,
all over the wall.
wallpaper on the ceiling everywhere. But the food, I mean, again, we were probably the only non-Asian people in that place. You knew the food was genuine, and that food, everyone, goes to Wo Hop, which is kind of like the...
Not bad.
It's good food, but it's sort of the, the tourist thing. But 69 Bayard, that was the place.
Well, yeah, and we had Bok Choy with us, my humble Asian sidekick, who spoke fluent Cantonese and Mandarin, and he liked it. But we're walking around, and I remember we're like, what are we going to do with the money? Because we had to bring the money uptown to do a bank drop. So it's like Pulp Fiction. We're sitting in this dive at 1 o'clock in the morning eating Chinese food, and I got the bag between my legs with 38 grand. I go, this is like something out of a movie. Like, no one would believe this.
Yeah.
All right, here's another story.
Go ahead.
You and I were working together. We get a call from Major Case Narcotics. They tell us they got a CI, upper echelon CI, who's got a guy in the Harlem DMV that's pumping out driver's licenses. You and I go, it's a rainy night. We go to the Pathmark up in the 340 for 204 to 207 Street. We put the CI in the car. There's 5 of us. We drive up to the Bronx, up in the 5-0. The CI lays out the plan, how it works. We said, great. We take the CI back over the bridge, the 225th Street bridge over to like 218th Street. He gets out of the car, throws on his hoodie, and vanishes into the night. It was pouring out. So the detectives, the major case guys are like, do you want to use them? And we're thanking them. And they're just about to take us back to get our car. Their phone rings. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
And he goes, the CI is on the phone. He goes, you see that guy that just walked past your car? He's a courier. It looks like he's got takeout food. He goes, there's at least a kilo in that bag. Follow him. Guy goes into the Pathmark parking lot, walks to the back of a Honda Accord, opens the door, gets in. He's in there 10 seconds, gets out. We do a rip. And then we're fighting over who's going to take the collar because remember the major case guys? It was under 2 keys or it was 2 keys.
Right.
And they had some crazy thing where they didn't want to take an arrest if it was under 3 keys. And then I said, well, I'll take it. And you're like, our lieutenant will lose his mind if we're on overtime and you come up with this and he's not a part of it. So just you and I'm trying to think. You were working the night. You weren't involved in this, but you were working the night. We were doing a 412. Frank and I stopped that Russian girl who her parents worked at the Russian, they were cooks at the Russian mission. And she ran away. And the parents didn't want to screw up their detail and get sent back to Moscow. So they didn't report their daughter missing. And I found her and her story didn't add up. She looked like a model. She was up in a 4-7 somewhere. We brought her back home and the family is like thanking us. It's like an international incident. And the father's trying to give us vodka. And Frank, who's retiring in 15 minutes, like, yeah. I was like, no. I says, let's just go. And we leave and we got back. Like you were calling us. So we get back to the office and you go, guys, I wanted to sign out at midnight. It's like 12:30. Where were you? And I go, Lonnie, do you know the term plausible deniability? And you're like, no. Do I want to know? I says, no, you really don't want to know. I says, no one got hurt, nothing. I go, if I tell you when something goes wrong, you're going to be a part of this. And then years later, I told you, it's the same as the Babe Ruth story. No, Lou Gehrig's story.
Lou Gehrig, which I was going to bring up. No, well, you got to tell it because that's your, long story from my end. Your partner, Frank, big Yankee fan. You worked in Riverdale. Just tell, because it's such a classic.
My old partner was a great guy. And one day we were Cal Ripken they were talking about Cal Ripken breaking Lou Gehrig's record. And my partner went nuts. That record that's Lou Gehrig's record. And
the Iron Horse.
The Iron Horse. And I'm like, what is he like? Lou Gehrig was dead and buried before my partner was born. Like, why is he, why, and just like, I was like, what did you get so hot under the collar for? He's like, no, that record, blah, blah, blah. And I thought about it. And one day we were up in Riverdale. Now, Lou Gehrig did live in Riverdale one time. He also lived in New Rochelle. And I knew where Lou Gehrig's house was. But one day I just pointed to a mansion. I go, who used to live there? And he goes, who? I go, Lou Gehrig. He slams on the brakes. He gets out. He almost got hit by a car. He's standing out there in front of this house, right? He goes to, back then it was disposable cameras. He goes to like a drugstore, buys a disposable, and he's taking photos of this house. And I'm like, oh, this is funny, right? And then like I worked for him for about 1.5 years, 2 years. On Fridays, if we weren't doing anything in the morning, he would go, let's go see the Iron Horse. And he would buy coffee and pastries and we would park across the street and he would marvel at the house. And he never lived there.
I never said, what are you guys doing for lunch? Oh, we're going to pick up a sandwich. And he's like, we're going to pick up a sandwich and we're going to eat in the car. We're going to go by the Iron Horse's house. We're going to sit outside his house and eat a sandwich.
Well, he never lived there. Frank retires. And one day, Frank's gone like maybe 1 year. And it was you, Steve, the other sergeant. And we were sitting around. I don't know how it came up. And I told you two guys, and the two of you were crying. I remember the two of you had tears in your eyes, like, why didn't you tell us? I says, because if I would have said it, it would have leaked out in our office and he would have found out. And you guys thought that was like the greatest thing. So then I called him and I told him about it. And he's like, why did you do it? I go, come on, Frank. It was funny. And he's like, yeah, I guess.
But he used to talk about it in the office, too.
I know.
Oh, we're going to the Iron Horse's house today. We're going to sit outside the Iron Horse's house.
So I retire. You stay in auto crime an extra couple of years, right? What year did you get promoted to lieutenant?
I was in beginning of 2008.
So you got promoted right after I left.
Yeah.
And you went to the 17th, which is, where is the 17th? It's on the east side, right?
First, third to last.
Okay, so on the east side. What did you think of the 17th?
It's funny. A couple months earlier, during Halloween, I was down at the Halloween parade working, ran into an old sergeant from the 4-3 who actually never said more than like 20 words to me when I was in the 4-3. And now he's the XO of the 17th. Really good guy. Just our paths really didn't cross. And he goes, "Oh, I was out with a bunch of guys last week, and I hear you're getting promoted." I said, "Yeah." He says, where are you looking to go?" I go, "Oh, I'm going to stay in the Bronx. I've been here." He's like, "No, no, 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 no. I got a spot in the 17th. I'm like, "I don't know if I want to go into Manhattan, Bob." He's like, "Well, think about it. Come meet the CEO." So I was talking to the other sergeant you just referenced before, Steve, who was a Manhattan guy in his career, and he's like, "Do you know?" Like, he goes, "That's a great place to work. You got to go." So I was like, "All right, let me go down." I met the CEO again, another salt of the earth guy, Eddie Burnson, and he's like, "Listen, I got a spot for you here if you want to come down." And I was like, "You know what? I'll try something." And then, I'm hearing from people my friends of mine who've made lieutenant, who are still up in the Bronx, and they're making 4 hours a month overtime, 5 hours, maybe 10 if they're lucky. And, he's like, "Listen, we've got so many details here. We have the United Nations, we have parades
That's
in
right.
and around the precinct, and, this day, that day, Steuben day, that day." And he's like, "You're going to make a good amount of overtime." And I'm like, "All right, that's perfect." Yeah, I think probably my career there, I probably averaged at least 35 to 40 hours a month when my buddies back in the Bronx were doing 3 and 4. And then, there was always something going on in Manhattan. And if you wanted the overtime, it was there, and the cops were good. I wouldn't say not as streetwise as the Bronx, but really good people, had a ton of laughs, even went out with them a few times after work for a couple of beers. Just good. Really. Yeah. I had a great time there.
Did you ever have to deal with any famous people working in that precinct?
You kind of run into them. I say one of the most famous. I was waiting for a guy. I had the police car, and I had to go over to. I want to say it was on either First or Second Avenue. And there was the Archdiocese, and I had
Yeah.
to go to a meeting there. And there was a guy in front of a thing, and he was double parked, and I hit the siren. He didn't move. So finally I get out. It's Nick Swisher from the Yankees. And he didn't hear. He had headphones on, but he was sitting there waiting for his wife, or girlfriend. I think it was his wife. And we started talking, and what a great guy. We're sitting there joking around. Oh, there's my wife calling. We're sitting around, and he's like, "Oh, man, I'd love to, come to the precinct." I go, "Listen, you want to come? You can come, tomorrow." He's like, "Yeah, tomorrow night." And he came, he signed autographs for all the guys and girls in the
Cool.
precinct. He brought some balls. Yeah, he was a real down to earth guy. Yeah, it was cool. But other than that, I mean, we'd see some of the famous people, but I didn't really, kind of get involved with them. It just happened because now I'm asking him to move his car, and I'm like, "Oh, Nick Swisher," and he was still playing for the Yankees at that point.
I think you and I met Liritz. Remember?
You met Tim Lear? Yep,
He was another great guy. We met
yep.
him at the US Open. So looking back, what was your favorite time on the job?
Snoop back in the
Really?
4-3. Yeah, yeah. And listen, it was great being a boss. But for the most part, you're one of the guys, but you're not truly, because sometimes you're the boss,
You got yeah.
and sometimes you have to kind of make a decision that not everybody likes, whether it's a day off or you know an arrest or just something. You have to kind of put your foot down. Yeah, I think the 4-3, Snoo was, again, I had the best team. We all, again, you depended on each other. You're in South Bronx, you're in the drug supermarket area. There's a lot of guns in the area, shootings. You gotta trust that the person next to you has your back, and they always did. So I think that, and from a camaraderie, that was probably my favorite time.
And what was the moment that told you it was time to retire?
I had kind of planned to go out at 20 and like 6 months. Long story short, I ended up getting transferred. Quick story. I get called by Manhattan South Borough one day, and they want to talk to me about a position in the borough. I heard that the counterterrorism lieutenant was leaving, and that I was being considered. I thought I was going there for that. It turned out I was going for another interview for um, Manhattan South inspections. I told him I'm not interested, no interest at all. Assistant chief was my old CO in the 4-8. Pushed for me, called me up personally after the so-called interview. Which, again, I didn't think I didn't know, wasn't sure of the position. I told him, I said, listen, I'm leaving in 8 months anyway. I said, no, thank you. And then I get a call. Hey, you've been transferred. I was like, what? And I get there and they had replaced the captain and both lieutenants. The other lieutenant was a friend of mine. And the captain basically on day one tells me it's 20 hours a month overtime and not a minute more. And I said, well, he's like, if there's a shooting, you're in charge. You're in charge of the borough shooting team. I said, well, listen, I don't have experience in it. I mean, I know what to do. I said, but if there's a shooting, I'm going to be working 20 hours straight no matter what. He says, well, it's only 21 per month. And at that point, I said to my wife, I have the time in. I'm not going to lose money because I would have lost money. And I said, that's it. And I went down the next day and I was at 1PP. I just got my final good guy letter. Guy just handed it to me and the captain called and he's like, where are you? And I'm like, oh, 1PP. He says, well, who authorized this? I said, no one. I said, I just retired. He's like, what? I'm like, yep, bye-bye.
Yeah, they think that they can kind of hold on to it. It's like, nah, I'm
Yeah.
out of here.
And again, I mean, I told him from the beginning, I'm leaving in 8 months. I mean, I got transferred in June. I mean, this was, like April. And I said, after the new year, the beginning of the new year, I'm going on a 2-week trip with the family. I said, and then I'm done.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Yeah.
So what are you doing with yourself now?
Enjoying retirement. I moved down to South Carolina in 55 and older community. That's amazing. I mean, there's just so much to do. Doing woodworking, I'm doing volunteering. You'll appreciate the volunteer job. When people move here, we have a lot of gates and they get RFID sticker to get in. I run the Monday sticker team. And I'm actually now in charge of scheduling for all the teams. And I'm on the security and safety board of directors here. A lot of fun, good people, try to keep active, I had neck surgery a little over 3 years ago, so that kind of limits me a lot in certain things. But I'm coaching softball, which I love. And just, you know what? You think you retire and you're just going to do nothing. Me and my wife look at our daily calendar and go, oh my God, how are we going to get all this done in a day?
Right.
Between things and friends and, the pool, try to hit the gym a little bit. Golf cart. I live on my golf cart. I drive all around this place. It's really, knock on wood, it's been fantastic. And haven't been back to New York. I have no plans to. Some point next year, I have to go back for a college fraternity reunion. But other than that, I miss good Italian bread. They don't have bread here.
You sound like me.
I mean, we have a freezer when everyone comes to visit. The rule is you bring loaves of Italian bread and I cut them and I freeze them because you can get almost everything else here. You can't get real bread here. You get sponge.
Or pizza.
Actually, I found a couple good pizza shops that are not too bad. Obviously, nothing like, Throg's Neck or Arthur Avenue Pizza or a couple other places. But yeah, bread is it's non-existent.
Lonnie,
Loving it, bud. Loving it.
I'm glad to see you doing well. You're one of my favorite supervisors of all time to work for. I was lucky enough to work with you twice, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do this interview.
Oh, Vic, anything for you. You taught me a lot. We had a lot of laughs,
Okay.
you don't realize how much you get to know somebody sitting in a car. And, we sat in the car together a lot of times, driving all over.
Surveillance.
Yeah. How much surveillance and what do?
Talk.
You sit and talk and chat and, life comes about and, yeah, it's been great. And thanks for asking me.
Oh, yeah.
This is, we do keep in touch, every once in a while we do keep in touch, but yeah, I'm glad you're doing well. I see a little bookshelf. I bought them all.
Thank you.
When I was at the hospitals, all my managers who worked for me, who were all NYPD guys, I got one every Christmas.
That's
Like one of my
good
gifts
idea.
I would give them. I know there's a bunch of the auto crime stories I know. And I know one of the ones where we were involved in. So, but all good stuff, man. All good stuff, bud.
Thank you. Thank you again. And as always, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in, especially my listeners in Des Moines, Iowa, South Salem, New York, Rancho Santa Margarita, California, Hicksville, New York, and Tappan, New York. If you work in law enforcement or have an interesting criminal background, drop me a note on Twitter or Instagram at VicFerrari50. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the like and subscribe button. If you enjoy the content, check out my Amazon author page where you'll find my series of behind the scenes NYPD books. They're $10 paperback, $2.99 ebook download, including my latest and greatest NYPD Behind the Blue Wall of Silence. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.